The war in Afghanistan that began after the U.S. was attacked on September 11th, 2001, goes on today.
The United States is in Afghanistan solely to prevent it from being used as another launch pad to attack America with terrorism. We suffered the worst attack in American history, launched from Afghanistan, when 19 crazed terrorists attacked America. In the few days after 9/11, while the Pentagon was still smoldering, there was a war cabinet called at Camp David by President Bush. Two options were presented. One, the Pentagon wanted to do a conventional invasion via Pakistan, but it would have taken them until the following springtime to organize the troops and mobilize them. They were afraid of the Afghan winter, and basically the U.S. military replicated the Soviet battle plan, and that's largely what we've been doing the last 17 years. The same thing the Soviet Union lost with in the 1980s.
The mood among these Soviet soldiers is one of immense relief at getting out unscathed. They won't stop now until the Soviet border. This is their last glimpse of Afghanistan.
The alternative was the CIA, which took a few case officers and special operations forces from the military, seconded to them, backed by air power, money, willpower, and authorities, and they got it done in a matter of weeks, devastating the Taliban, killing thousands of them, and routing most of al-Qaeda. They used horses when the Taliban and al-Qaeda were even tied to a more conventional approach. So that scene of U.S. Special Forces and case officers doing a cavalry charge on horseback with a satellite radio on their backs is a great example of innovation in warfare, something that we've been lacking as we've gone to a more conventional approach.
The number of U.S. troops in Afghanistan has doubled to 16,000.
The United States has spent dearly in blood and treasure and time in Afghanistan. Sadly, there are still more than 20-some terrorist organizations that are resident there. It is the ultimate cesspool or cauldron where bad things can happen from. Remember, the 9/11 attacks were dreamed of, organized, planned from Afghanistan. So denying terror sanctuary is essential, but we're not even able to do that right now. But we have to get it right. Pulling out of Afghanistan completely is not the answer. You'd have the same kind of blowback like we had in Iraq. So you have to find a way that's sustainable.
The amount of money that we're spending as a country there, $62 billion this year, is more than the entire UK defense budget. It's more than the entire US Department of Homeland Security budget.
We're wasting a lot of money. A smaller, more unconventional approach is necessary, something that mirrors more of what the U.S. Special Operations Forces have been doing there. Ultimately, the national security bureaucracy surrounding the president really gave him two options: add more troops. They even asked for as many as 70,000 more troops, or pull out in disgrace and leave Afghanistan really like what happened in Iraq when Obama pulled out everything from Iraq and the country fell apart.
It is time for us to transition to the Iraqis. They need to take responsibility for their country and for their sovereignty.
The option I was pushing, the options that were considered by some in the White House, an irregular warfare option that would use CIA capability, some special forces capability, some contracted capability to strengthen, to give a skeletal support structure to the Afghan security forces that will let them put unrelenting pressure on the terrorists. The president wasn't even given that option because, again, the Pentagon does what it does, and it wanted to keep doing the same thing it's been doing for the last 17 years. And you know what Einstein said, the definition of insanity is to do the same thing and expect a different result. A year ago, the decision was made to stay the course. The president gave the Pentagon what they wanted: more troops and more money. Since then, the Taliban have taken more terrain, they control more districts, and there's been tens of thousands of Afghan military and civilian deaths and casualties. The Taliban and ISIS seems to strike at will, even in the Afghan capital. And so, for all the claims of victory is at hand, as has been claimed by almost every other commander over the last 16 years, we are still in, at best, a stalemate. All the might and technology and all the wonder of the U.S. military, if we can't defeat an enemy that is 80% illiterate and really not all that well equipped, we have a problem, and it's time to go a different direction. The president rightly campaigned on ending endless wars.
I said, don't go into Iraq, it's a mistake, and I said, don't go into Iraq. I was against going into Iraq.
We have $21 trillion in debt. The strategic economy of force for the Afghan forces costs a fraction of what the U.S. is squandering now. utilizing about 6,000 contractors embedded with the Afghan military versus the 45,000 foreign personnel currently in the country. To enact this approach, President Trump should appoint a special presidential envoy and empower them to wage an unconventional war against the Taliban and Daesh forces, to hold the corrupt officials accountable, and to negotiate with their Afghan counterparts and with the Afghan Taliban that are willing to reconcile with Kabul. As the skeletal support of mentors and air power and governance stand up, the conventional DoD and NATO forces can go home, leaving a much, much smaller footprint. So this idea of a CIA, small, nimble, aggressive, unconventional warfare approach is the right answer, because when we went to a conventional approach, we've been going backwards ever since. It is time for the president to bring closure to this thing. He has the opportunity, he has the vision. He doesn't need to necessarily go with all the so-called foreign policy experts that are telling him to just stay the course, because it's irresponsible and it's reckless with American lives and treasure.